Hello students, so we're going to go ahead and look at some examples from section 7.5 on hypothesis tests for the variance or standard deviation. So this is problem 1 from the homework in section 7.5, and it says that an insurance agent says the standard deviation of the total hospital charges for patients involved in a crash in which the vehicle struck a construction barricade is less than $3,300. A random sample of 20 total hospital charges for patients involved in this type of crash has a standard deviation of $4,200. So at the significance level of 0.05, can you support the agent's claim? And it says use the p-value method to test the claim. Okay, so I've provided a brief summary of the information that was given in the problem. Okay, so the claim we're testing is that the standard deviation of the population of these hospital charges is less than $3,300. Okay, we have a random sample of 20 such hospital charges. Okay, and the standard deviation is $4,200. Okay, we're going to use a significance level of 0.05 to test the claim. Okay, so before we go ahead and test the claim, this is a really important point. Okay, so remember that the square of the standard deviation is equal to the variance. Okay, so if you're given the standard deviation in the problem, okay, like we are here, so we're given the standard deviation of the population and the standard deviation of the sample. So remember that we have to raise it to the second power to obtain the variance when inputting the information in the StackRich. Okay, otherwise, if we don't do that, we're going to get an incorrect result. Okay, so to demonstrate that, let's go to StackRich. Okay, so whenever you do hypothesis tests for variances or standard deviation, you're going to go to variance stats from the stat menu. Okay, select one sample since we're only working with one sample. And then we don't have the actual data, but we have the summary of the data. Okay. Okay, so for example, if you just input the information of the problem, okay, so the sample variance being, or the sample standard deviation being 4,200. Okay, the sample size is 20. Okay, so we're going to select the first button for hypothesis test. Okay, and then the hypothesized population standard deviation is 3,300, but we are hypothesizing that it's less than 3,300. Okay, so 3,300 is going to go in this box. Okay, and we're going to input less than, the less than symbol in the alternative hypothesis, and then we can check the box for a p-value plot. Okay, so let's see if this is correct, right? So in the alternative hypothesis, okay, the less than symbol should be used. Okay, so it looks like answer choice B, which means the greater than or equal to symbol is used in the null hypothesis. Okay, so the next part is asking for the test statistic. Okay, so this would be the test statistic. It's called the chi-square stat. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and round that to 2 decimal places, so it's 24.18. So let's see if that is correct. If it's not, we're going to go back and make the necessary changes. So 24.18 would be the test, or the chi-squared statistic. Okay, and notice that it's telling us that it's incorrect. Okay, and then remember what I said earlier, that the square of the standard deviation is equal to the variance. Okay, and we are very clearly given the standard deviation of the population, right? So we are hypothesizing that the standard deviation of the population is less than 3,300. Okay, and then likewise, in our random sample of 20 hospital charges, the standard deviation was 4,200. Okay, so clearly this isn't the correct test statistic. Okay, it's telling us to use a formula given in the book. Okay, but let's avoid using the formula. Okay, let's see if we can actually get the correct answer using StackRich. Okay, so let's actually go back. So we have to edit the information. So we're going to go click on Options, Edit. So remember that if you didn't notice before, right, this is sample variance. Okay, not the sample standard deviation, right? The sample standard deviation, right, in the problem was 4,200, right? So in the 20 hospital charges in our sample, right, the standard deviation of those charges was 4,200. But remember, we need the variance. Okay, StatCrunch is asking you for the variance. Okay, not the standard deviation. Okay, so to get the variance, we need to square that value or raise it to the second power. Right, so what you can literally do in StatCrunch is you can type in caret and then to the second power. So on your keyboard, you would hit Shift 6 to get the caret symbol, and then type in the exponent of 2. Do that again. So Shift 6, and followed by the exponent of 2, so that StatCrunch recognizes that as the variance. Okay, not the standard deviation. So 4,200 squared would be the sample variance. Okay, likewise here, instead of typing in 3,300, which was the hypothesized population standard deviation, right, we're going to type in 3,300 to the second power. Okay, so Shift 6, and then followed by the 2. Okay, and that's the variance, the population variance. So let's recompute the results. Okay, so this is the sample variance. The degrees of freedom is 19. And then this is our test statistic, so 30.77. So that 7 gets rounded up to an 8. So 30.78 would be the test statistic. So the chi-square stat is our test statistic. Right, versus 24.18, which is what we were getting before. So 30.78. Okay, right, so all of that to show you that you need to be aware, right, of how you're supposed to enter the variance for the sample, okay, and then the variance for the population. Okay, so if you're given the standard deviation, make sure you raise it to the second power. Okay, and you can do this on a handheld calculator and then type in the value directly. That's fine. You don't have to type in Shift 6 and then followed by the exponent of 2. Right, you can input it into your calculator and then type in the value of the variance that your calculator gives you. Okay, so that was our test statistic. Okay, now we need the p-value. Okay, so again, our p-value would be this number here, so 0.9573. And I think it wants it to 4 decimal places, so 0.9573 will be the answer there. So rounded to, okay, it's 3 decimal places. So 0.957. Okay, so to decide whether we reject the null hypothesis, okay, we compare the p-value to the significance level. Okay, so remember, if the p-value is less than the significance level, so the significance level in this test is 0.05. So if the p-value was somehow less than that, right, we would reject the null hypothesis. But in this case, the p-value is larger than the significance level of 0.05, so we failed to reject the null hypothesis. Okay. Okay, so the claim, right, is given in the alternative hypothesis, right? The fact that an insurance agent believes that the standard deviation of these hospital charges is less than 3,300, right? That's the alternative hypothesis. Okay, means that there's not enough evidence, okay, to support the claim, right? The insurance agent's claim. So it looks like answer choice C. Okay, but read these answer choices carefully on your own. All right, so we've correctly completed question 1. Okay, so let's go to look at problem 3. And it says a hospital spokesperson claims that the standard deviation of the waiting times experienced by patients in its minor emergency department is no more than 0.5 minutes, so no more than half a minute. A random sample of 19 waiting times has a standard deviation of 0.7 minutes, so at a significance level of 0.10, right, is there enough evidence to reject the spokesperson's claim? Okay, so here's a brief summary of what we know from the problem. Okay, so the claim given is that the standard deviation of these wait times is no more than, okay, 0.5 minutes. Okay, a random sample of 19 wait times has a standard deviation of 0.7 minutes. Okay, so we're going to test the claim at the 0.10 level of significance. All right, so let's go ahead and go to StatCrunch. Okay, and then we're going to go to the stat menu and then select variance stats with one sample, since we only have one sample. And then with the summary, since we don't have the actual data values. Okay, and notice that it's asking for the sample variance in this first box. Okay, and in the problem, okay, it tells us that the standard deviation of the sample was 0.7. Okay, so you can do one of two things, right? You can literally go to your calculator, go to a handheld calculator, okay, and type in 0.7 to the second power, okay, to get the sample variance, which is 0.49. So in other words, we have to do that because if you type in 0.7, you're going to get an incorrect result. The 0.7 is the standard deviation of the sample, not the variance. Okay, right, so you can type in 0.49, right, or on your keyboard, hit the Shift-6 button as follows, right, to get that symbol for the exponent, and then type in 2, so that StatCrunch knows that you're squaring that value to get the variance. But in any case, right, since we already have that value on our calculator, we can type in 0.49 for the sample variance. Okay, 0.7 squared is 0.49. Okay, the sample size was 19. Okay, and then the hypothesized value of the standard deviation of the population, right, was 0.5. Okay, so remember that's a standard deviation, not a variance. Okay, so we need to square that. So 0.5 or 0.5 squared, okay, is 0.25. Okay, so once again, in StatCrunch, you can do one of two things, right? Type in 0.5 to the second power, right? Or in your handheld calculator like we just did, right? Type in the actual value, which is 0.25. So 0.5 squared is 0.25. Okay, that's the hypothesized value of the population variance. Okay, that's what you input here into StatCrunch, so 0.25. Okay, so no more than, right, would mean less than or equal to. Okay, so that would go in the null hypothesis. So less than or equal to would go in the null hypothesis. Okay, now unfortunately we can't change that equal to a less than or equal to. Okay, so then what do we put in the alternative? Right, so if we have a less than or equal to in the null, right, then the opposite of that, the opposite of less than or equal to would be greater than. So we're going to put a greater than in the alternative hypothesis. Okay. All right, so remember to look at your notes. Right? Review the notes we went over a couple of videos ago. Okay, so the right, so the opposite of less than or equal to is greater than. Okay, so that's what we're going to put in the alternative. Okay, so greater than. Okay, so when we set it up, right, we should have a less than or equal to 0.5 in the null, and then a greater than in the alternative. Okay, then we need the test statistic. Which is 35.28. Okay, and then the p-value, which is 0.0087. So 0.0087 rounded to 4 decimal places. Okay, so our p-value 0.0087, okay, is clearly less than, okay, the 0.10, okay, our significance level. Okay, so then we compare the p-value to the significance level. So clearly the p-value is less than the significance level. Okay, so we reject the null hypothesis, right? So there is enough evidence at the 10% level of significance to reject the spokesperson's claim.